I like that. Thank you. So let's begin. Vote Ready, how to reach young and first-time voters. So there's a picture of me. As John mentioned, I am the chief of staff at Vote.org. Really, really honored and great to be here with you all. A little bit of background about myself. I started working in this field over 12 years ago. And when I started doing this work, it was out of means of survival. I grew up in the Bronx, New York, the daughter of an immigrant from the Dominican Republic and a Black Muslim father. And growing up in a mixed status household where we spoke multiple languages as well as had various different faith beliefs, it taught me early on the importance of just organizing and movement and being together in community with folks, seeing that barriers that my family were facing weren't very different from other barriers. Fast forward, my mother being deported in 2009 and being put into a foster care system, having to maneuver systems at a young age also really inspired me to get into this work as an organizer. So regardless of what title I hold, having worked with some really amazing organizations and elected officials across the country, I first and foremost always identify as an organizer, and I'm in the business of relationships. Some training objectives that we'll be going over today: how to reach a critical audience of new and young voters. And I like that we separated young and new, because just because you are a new voter doesn't necessarily mean that you're young. Ways new and young voters can get out the vote and help others do the same. And then last but not least, how Vote.org, our online tools, our mobile accessible tools, can be of use to you and your team in your newsrooms. So a little bit about Vote.org. We serve as the largest 501c3 nonprofit and nonpartisan organization in this space, focusing on voter registration and voter turnout technology. And under the leadership of our CEO, Andrea Haley, Vote.org is also the only Black woman-led organization in the space. And we continue to be a trusted resource for over 40 million Americans across the country. I just got news this morning that that number has bumped to 42 million, and that would have been within the last week. So I have to update this slide. With that being said, across the country, folks are desiring to find reliable resources that will help them utilize their right to vote in order to shift power. And Vote.org is making sure that that happens, because we believe that the electorate should also reflect the US population, which is why our technology platform is focused on engaging folks, as well as increasing voter turnout and strengthening American democracy as a whole. So as we all know, COVID-19 paid us a little visit in the beginning of 2020. I actually joined the Vote.org team right when all the quarantine and state shutdowns were happening, so about mid-March. And being chief of staff, you can imagine how some challenges and yet opportunities really came from that. So with that being said, the team worked in less than 48 hours to create a one-stop shop resource hub with state-by-state information, all things COVID-19 related. And why this is so important is because there was no .gov website available when all of this was happening. So as we're in the middle of literal primaries and folks voting early, there was no information about what's happening in the states in regards to shutdown, and there was a lot of confusion. So I'm going to click the presentation and go to the website here. This is our resource hub that's available on our main website, and I'll show you another way where you can access this, not just in the slide. Here, all things coronavirus related and state by state. So you can either use this drop box to scroll down. I myself am originally from New York, but I've been based out of Las Vegas, Nevada for the past 5 years. So I would click the state of Nevada. And any information that's pertaining to updates of coronavirus, there will be a link or wording and other information available to help me navigate this process easier. So I want to talk about some facts and some numbers with you all. And I'm sure as journalists, this is one of your favorite conversations to have. So let me entertain you for a bit. 100 million eligible voters did not turn out in 2016. I'm going to let you come up with your own word of how that makes you feel when you hear that. But I know for me, it takes a huge pin to not only my heart, but also my mind, because I cannot imagine how 100 million folks who were eligible just didn't turn out. And to me, that is beyond not being interested in something. There was definitely a breakage somewhere. So, with that being said, we have to make sure that our youth and new voters have access to the information, as coronavirus has introduced even more barriers and confusion this cycle. So, 1 in 10 eligible voters born after 1996, Gen Z, will be eligible to vote this election. And for me, when I think about that, I'm the eldest daughter of 6 girls. All of my younger sisters were born after 1996. Therefore, they're all a part of Gen Z. So I think, how do I engage them, or what is the best way to engage them? Even as their sister, they've watched me do this work for over a decade. They are still not as engaged. So what is the disconnect there? And when you think about 37% of the electorate being millennials, myself included, and Gen Z combined, that is a huge population that may not turn out to vote. So again, as we see these barriers and these blockers happening because of the pandemic, we also have to understand and uplift that these barriers to the ballot box are not new for BIPOC communities. They're not new when it comes to elder communities not having access or not having accessibility to broadband or Wi-Fi in certain areas. Issues to the ballot box are just now amplified because of the coronavirus. However, this has been decades of voter suppression that we're now seeing and trying to play catch up with in the next 42 days. So, in order to best support young and first time voters this cycle, it is essential to remind voters that the COVID virus does not take away their fundamental right to vote. And also, there are so many options out there to vote this year. As we all know, most communities of color, I'm speaking of Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, are usually used to voting in person. However, with the coronavirus, we can't be so sure that that's the best way for folks to vote. So there's a lot of conversation about vote by mail or absentee ballot, which I hope we all can agree is the same thing, and we should continue to report and continue to use language that is universal and accessible to all people, as well as making sure people know their vote early or their early voting options, as well as drop box options. I mean, there's various ways that folks can get out the vote, even though the coronavirus is happening. And it's essential for us to continue to push the narrative, as these essential voters are risking their lives to get out the vote, that they have options and they should be empowered to their options. And then the second point is to point folks to reliable resources. And I'm sure you all as journalists have to constantly check and make sure that the sources you're providing are factual and up to date and timely. And I'm very, very proud to say that the Vote.org team works closely with one of the best, if not the best, legal teams in the country to make sure that all the information we're providing is accurate. And if there's any time that we slip up due to changes that are happening in real time, we take ownership and make corrections, and also make sure that every state has access to their elections SOS site as well, so folks can go to their .gov site and make sure that they're getting the information they need. So let's go to vote.org. I hope you all had an opportunity to visit the page beforehand, but if you haven't, I'm going to ask that you join along here now. And some other cool ways that you can find vote.org online is, again, via your smartphone through your browser, typing in vote.org, or if you are an iPhone user like myself and have Siri on your phone, you can ask Siri how to register to vote, or how to check your voter registration, how to apply for your absentee, how to find your polling place location, and I am 99.99% sure she will send you to vote.org every time. So in under 30 seconds, those are 3 easy ways that you can access vote.org and show your users how to do the same. So let's go on the site. So the vote.org site is very accessible and easy to read for users. What I love most about it is we make sure that our banner for our COVID-19 site is right there on the front page. There's no need for you to dig and look to find the accurate information you need. We provide it right there in your face in a nice, friendly banner. So I'm going to click it just to show you that it goes right to our COVID-19 page, as I showed earlier. The drop box is still there. We also provide CDC recommendation links, as well as reminding folks to please also check their state site frequently as they're checking vote.org. So as I go back to our main page, we also have our lovely countdown ticker there. 42 days, 11 hours, 41 minutes, and 13 seconds. No one is counting. But with that being said, you'll scroll down and you'll see that there's various tools that users can click on to get what they need. And vote.org's hashtag of everything you need to vote is not just a hashtag, it is real life. We are really, really here to make sure that American citizens and voters have access to everything that they need to vote in a click of a button. So I'm going to start with our check your registration tool, because I like to call this our catch-all tool. Because even if you're not registered to vote, after you fill out this quick 30-second form, if you are not registered to vote, we will then redirect you to assist you and make sure that you are registered. And if you are registered to vote, you get a cute little message with a green completion saying, hey, you're all set, thank you for being a voter, etc. So it's an easy way to make sure that you are connecting with 2 different audiences and making sure that they both have what they need. I'm going to go back to the main page real quick. As you see, our register vote tool is there. It looks very similar, if not identical, to our verify tool, and that's on purpose. Again, we're not here to make things more confusing for the voter. We're here to make things as easy as possible. And if the voter thought they were registered to vote, but due to moving or some other event they aren't, they're still able to complete the process regardless of which tool they use, which is really awesome. Our vote by mail tool, which I would like to take a second to discuss, because it's so amazing how technology evolves over time. So when vote.org was first started back in the early 2000s, we were known as long distance voter. And if you are familiar with us from back then, our main purpose was to make sure that American citizens abroad had access to the ballot box in the US. So we've always had an absentee ballot vote by mail tool since we started, because that was one of our main objectives. So as I like to say, bringing my new school mix to it, we're not new to this, we're true to this, and vote.org has been here for voters, because vote by mail and absentee voting is not new. There's states across this country who that's the only way that they implement voting. So it's time that we, as subject matter experts in this space who have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, take leadership and integrate our tools. So that's what we did. Working with grassroots organizations and other folks in the movement space who have talked to us about the additional barriers to vote by mail, like not having access to a printer, or not being able to afford stamps, or not having transportation to go to your local post office. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at this holistically when we were putting our green thumb behind vote by mail absentee during the coronavirus. So what we did was incorporated a print and mail integrated tool in our already made scalable vote by mail absentee tool, which allowed voters to print as well as send in their absentee ballot through our tool, which is very new and also very amazing to be able to remove that barrier from hundreds of thousands of Americans who have spoken to us and stated that this was an issue. We also went a step further and make sure that folks have tracking codes to see what is happening in their process and to make sure that they are engaged properly and there's no funny business that's happening. So I'm really, really excited. I mean, the engineering team worked so hard to make this a reality, and to see how it's been so beneficial in states across the country is really fulfilling and also stepping up to what we need this moment. Our election reminders, again, a quick 15 minutes sends election update reminders to voters who opt in. And what's so great about this is as states are changing their laws almost daily, we're able to give up-to-date information. I also look at this as, you know, when I make an appointment in my day-to-day life, I like getting a notification or text like, hey, you have an appointment coming up at this date and this time. Why can't we do the same for voting? And it's really amazing to see that Vote.org has been able to do that, and so many people take advantage of it. Another piece to that is if you sign up for any of our tools, you can also opt in to get election reminders. So you don't necessarily have to go to the election reminders tool. You can access that resource through any of our other tools as well. Pledge to Register, the only tool of its kind on the market. Pledge to Register allows and builds a pipeline of young, vigilant, upcoming voters 13 to 17 to get involved in the process early and pre-pledge that they're going to register to vote at the age of 18. Once they turn 18, they receive a text message from vote.org saying, hey, congratulations and happy birthday. You're now eligible to register to vote. Please click here for your state's election process. And we walk the student or the youth through on how they can register to vote on their 18th birthday, which is really great. Some other tools that I want to point out here, our polling place locator, which I just got news from our engineering team as well. We're looking to integrate drop boxes as well, which is going to be a huge change maker. Again, something, and no one's necessarily paying me at the moment to say this, but something that I love so much about the Vote.org team is how we look at this holistically and we're not afraid to see what's out there and try new things in order to make things easier for our voters. And to add this drop box locator with our polling place locator, I truly believe is going to be a game changer. So more on that. But with that being said, you can scroll down and you'll see that, again, all 50 states and District of Columbia are available for everything you need to know. Just click the link and it will walk you through your polling place locator. Two partnership opportunities that we've worked on in 2020 have been to recruit poll workers. And that's something that, again, we are really working on making sure that youth are aware that as young as 16, 17 years old, you too can be a part of the process and support elections, even if you can't necessarily vote. So it's really wonderful as we're looking for innovative ways to protect our family, friends, and loved ones, especially our seasoned voters who are usually the ones who step up to the plate and do poll watching, but right now need to be the ones resting and making sure that they vote safely this election. So our Become a Poll Worker tool is really awesome for connecting and making sure people are aware of the opportunities in their state, as well as our Census 2020 tool, which we've had for quite some time now. I want to say since April, if not March. And it allows folks to go directly to the .gov site to fill out their census form. Again, everything you need to vote and then some is in one beautiful toolbox on the beginning of the page on vote.org. I'm going to also take a second to just scroll down so you can see the rest of the website, because a lot of times people just go to our tools and don't realize there's a whole additional website. So again, if you are looking for information on your state, here are click easy links for election deadlines, dates, and rules. A few quotes. Our social media and email, as well as additional information about our free online tools, which I'll talk about in a second, as well as our premium tools, which usually organizations and corporations purchase in order to receive the back-end data of folks who are registering and using their tools online. And then we also have a shop if you're looking for any cool vote swag this election season. And then there's additional links to different projects, initiatives, things that we do at vote.org. So please feel free at your leisure to visit those as well. So as I go back to the presentation, I mentioned that we have free tools, and our free tools online are available to you 24/7, 365. And what's so great about that is you don't need vote.org to get these embed links. It's literally on the website. So if you go to our free tools section here, you will see the same thing that is on my slide. I also linked it here. Just a sidebar, after this presentation, you will have access to this with links and other resources to help you. So you'll be able to click free tool links and get there as well. And it's great if you need additional resources or know other organizations who are looking for ways to get out the vote. Please, please, please utilize our resources. They're out there for a reason. They're scalable and they're reliable and they work. All right, vote.org by the numbers. So this is one of my favorite parts because I get to brag a little bit. And vote.org is not used to really claiming. We're a very humble group. I like to not be so humble sometimes. So as our year-to-date GOTV numbers, our peer-to-peer texting program alone has contacted 2.3 million folks. We have individually reached 6 million folks through GOTV text messaging, and we have reached 4.9, almost 5 million folks via our GOTV emails. And what's so significant about this for me as someone who's been doing electoral campaigns for as long as I have been is on a normal, quote-unquote normal election cycle, we wouldn't start GOTV until about October. And the fact that vote.org has literally been by the side of the voter since Get Out the Vote primary season and continued that relationship and making sure that voters are empowered is something that needs to be uplifted, as most campaigns think short term, and vote.org has been thinking about this long term since the beginning of the pandemic. Some other national numbers about our tools and our users. We have 42 million all-time users, as I mentioned earlier. We have 9 million users on our voter file from January to September, about 100 million, excuse me, I wish, about 1 million voters per month for the voter file. We have 5 million verified on our voter registration verify tool. Compared to 2018 midterms, which we also did a ton of impactful work, that wasn't even close to 1 million. So our scalability, as we've grown of a strong but mighty team of 12, we have really worked the past 2 years in making sure that we were able to be scalable. And I mean, these numbers even surprise us sometimes. We're at 2 million when it comes to voter registration. And in 2018, we were almost at 250,000. And then currently we're at 2.4 million vote by mail start events. And we were at not even 200,000 back in 2018. And as I mentioned, why we're able to even have our comparable numbers from 2018 is because Vote.org has had this vote by mail tool for over a decade. We've just been able to sharpen the tool and be innovative and be bendable and flexible for our users this election cycle. So I'm going to go into a few of our initiatives or campaigns that were developed this year. The first one is our hashtag VoteReady campaign. And you may have seen it on Twitter or other social media. But this is our campaign to ensure that businesses, colleges, individuals, people from all walks of life have access to the things they need to vote and are also prepped with the materials and the resources they need, because online organizing has become so huge. We understand the importance of having social assets and toolkits that people can refer to that are, again, reliable and have valid information to stop the spread of disinformation that's happening, and at alarming rates at that. So I want to highlight for sure, tomorrow, Tuesday, September 22nd, is National Voter Registration Day. As we all know, September 4th, the 4th September of every year, the Tuesday, is National Voter Registration Day, and we're partnering with the organization as well as a coalition of other grassroots organizations and movement folks across the country to do a voter registration push. Saturday, October 24th, is going to be Vote Early Day. And then, of course, last but not least, Tuesday, November 3rd, is Election Day, as we are continuing to push folks to plan early, as well as to use early voting options in their states. We want to be mindful of folks who will still be voting on Election Day. And there's additional activation days that can be found on the website as well. I'm going to click here to give you an example. Again, our sites really focus on being clean, precise, and straight to the point. We don't want the user or the voter to go through 1,000 hoops in order to find the information they need. So we give you some information about what this campaign is about and also what you can do to be vote ready, as well as dates and the importance of them. We also show you who our partners are and who we're working with. And we also invite the user to become a partner with us. And as most of our websites are created, we provide additional links to resources, usually vote.org related resources, to the bottom of the page for voters to browse at their leisure. And I'm going to just click here to show you some of the social assets. And again, this is all free, all accessible. Please, please, please push this out so folks can utilize them the best way they find fit. And if folks aren't sure how they can use it, we have toolkits that are available that will walk people through different action items and different ways they can be involved. So here's a screenshot of the toolkits that I was just showing you in real time on the website. One of the toolkits that I want to highlight is definitely the student athlete toolkit. We've been working with colleges across the country and making sure that student athletes are prepared to continue to be the student leaders there are to get out the vote this year. So one of the pages in the toolkit is this cute little checklist. And why I wanted to point this out is this checklist can be used for anybody. You don't have to be a student athlete. I don't care how old you are. This is a very reliable source for anyone who is looking for a map or a clear way to get their rights heard this year and to flex their vote. I also wanted to highlight our Coaches for Change campaign, which is a new initiative that we created for, of course, 2020, and making sure that we're tying in the youth vote. So coaches across the country have combined and joined forces to create this website for folks who have never voted before, as well as folks who have voted. And each page has different action items or resources that the student or anyone can go to learn more. It's also a gorgeous interactive website that talks about racial injustices and social justice, as well as systemic racism and the power of voting. So again, to see this coming from student athletes, to see this coming from coaches, it's really important to Vote.org that we collaborate and partner and work with folks from all backgrounds. We are nonpartisan for a reason, and we make sure that we work with people who just want to get the word out. So again, I invite you to please visit this website, to scroll through it, to see how gorgeous it is, to read more about it. When you click I'm ready for change, that's where you go to the main page that I showed you earlier. Let's say I have never voted before, and then there's a bunch of resources here on how you can prepare. Let's say I want to register to vote. I will click this, and it brings you to Vote.org resources. So what's wonderful about that is our partners are able to embed our resources and our tools in whichever way they like. So it's, again, accessible and easy, user-friendly for the voter. I'm going to continue to scroll down just to show you some additional things like ACT. They have our census form toolkit or tool link here. They have our change voter registration link here. There's also some videos that they suggest from different platforms, podcasts and other music, some reading. So again, this is an amazing, amazing holistic approach to get youth and student athletes involved and make sure that Gen Z and millennials feel supported this election cycle, as well as, again, new voters. Let's go back. So you may have heard of our electionday.org campaign, which is, again, not a new campaign for Vote.org. It was actually very popular in 2018, and we were able to do a lot with this initiative, but we had to switch things up a little bit with coronavirus and understanding that certain businesses were going to have a harder time with implementing some work-friendly policies than others. So we've been working really hard with over 800 corporations and businesses across the country to make sure that they support their employees to get out the vote this year. So some facts, again, I love to talk about the car facts. 30% of voters stated that they did not vote in 2016 because of some difficulty with their schedule with either work or with school. So that's quite alarming when 35% of folks are unable to, again, flex their right to shift power because they don't have the support. So we're making sure at Vote.org we friendly nudge and support these companies and these organizations to make sure that they're doing right by their people. And I'll click here for the website. And I linked it to our policies, so it's easy for you to reach and read more about it on your time. Some other things that I wanted to highlight definitely were the companies that were participating or that are participating. So some of these names of logos that you see are really big names and folks that are known to be quite influential. But what I love to show is our list of vote-friendly companies here that shows all 700 to 800 companies, because you'll see there's businesses with as small of 1 to 10 employees to thousands. So the point of that is to show unity across businesses as well as the importance of impact, and there is no impact that's too small that can be done. So it's really beautiful to see folks from different industries come together to meaningfully support their employees. Another resource I want to highlight is our Wikihow partnership. So I remember being in grade school and we had to do these how-tos. One of my favorite how-tos was actually how to make Kool-Aid. And my 7th grade teacher, Miss Blackoff, was just very, very entertained and loved that I put so much emphasis on the process to make sure that folks made the best Kool-Aid they possibly can with step-by-step directions. So our WikiHow page, same thing. We want to make sure that voters and users have step-by-step, easy access to make the best Kool-Aid for whatever flavor they're picking in the 2020 election. So I'm going to click the link and show you the website. So wikihow.com/vote2020. Not only do we have step-by-step guides, but we also provide step-by-step videos for users by any means necessary. We know that folks have different learning styles. Adults are no different. So it's important to us to make sure that we're providing this information in as many ways, in as many forms, to as many people as possible. And I just want to take a moment again to thank you all on this call to make sure that that happens this election and moving forward. So our newest campaign, the Plan Your Vote campaign, is a visual arts initiative that we're using to help folks speak about voting and their plan early. As we know, everything that's happening with the United States Postal Service and other barriers with states and when it comes to voting, we want folks to start thinking about this now. And granted, 42 days, people would think, oh no, everyone's thinking about it. When you are worried about survival and making sure that you're not being evicted or that you have food on the table, you may not be thinking about voting right now in 42 days. However, it's important to make sure that folks feel empowered to know that there's resources and folks here available to make sure that they participate in the process. So the Plan Your Vote campaign is more on the artsy side, which we love. We've been working with a lot of artists and influencers at Vote.org to make sure that we're reaching people where they are as well as their interests. So with our arts project, there's multiple artists, their Instagram names are there, more information. There's also museums that have partnered with this initiative. As you can see on the toolbar here, you can quickly link to our resources and our tools that I went over. This is register, our verify tool, our absentee tool, and of course our election reminders. And then about just gives you more information about the initiative, who's working on it, who's our partners, and just thanks. It's a really beautiful, amazing way to get artists involved, and artists of all genres have been coming to Vote.org to partner with us this election cycle, and we're just really grateful for everyone putting their heart and hustle out there for a stronger democracy. So before I go, I wanted to highlight our partnership with Yellow Pain, the 20-year-old rapper from Ohio, whose first song was also about voting. And he came across Vote.org and our tools when he was trying to figure out how to vote in the Ohio primaries that were a disaster, if you recall. And this beautiful partnership with this new song with 7th Streeter came out. So I invite you at your time to also listen to the song and see the video. Vote.org is all over the video, and we're just really honored for folks who have gone above and beyond to make sure that we're meeting people where they are this election cycle. So with that being said, that was my last slide. Again, I'm Najaah Daniels. My contact information can be found here. And thank you again for all the work that you're doing now. And I'm looking forward to continuing this discussion. Have a good one.
Najaah, thank you so much for that. I think that I really enjoyed your presentation because I think that it gave us kind of a window into some of the different tools that that young people have to be civically engaged this time around. Axios just put out a report on Friday that basically showed that most people who are in the age range that you're talking about, that even when it comes to registering to vote or being engaged, that they do that on the internet, which is not a surprise at all. So thank you so much for walking us through how you all are engaging with people on the various platforms that they're using. And one thing I want to say you all about those embeddable tools that Najaah mentioned is that they're just a really great way for your readers to be civically engaged while they're going through your content. And so to have access to those tools to embed on your site, whether it's, somebody trying to figure out where their polling place is, or whether it's somebody trying to figure out, where, if they're registered or not, like all of these things are important for people to be engaged. Sorry, I have something flying in my eye here in my house. But Najaah, a question that I have for you is, through your work and through the research that you all do, and I know you mentioned it a little earlier, but like, what would you say is the biggest kind of reason? I know you talked about that disparity in the last election of young people not necessarily getting to the polls in large numbers, but what would you say in your estimation, based on what you've seen? And like I said, I know you alluded to it earlier. What's the biggest reason for that? Like, how can journalists, understand that? How can journalists understand that other than this many young people didn't show up to the polls?
Thank you for that question. So yeah, there's multiple reasons, but let's go back to the basics and talk about voter suppression and how voter suppression has constantly targeted young voters, for decades on end. So some of there's like top 5 tactics that I usually talk about of voter suppression. I would say first and foremost, definitely access to voter ID. So as I mentioned during the presentation, I grew up in the foster care system, and a student like myself, although I was very active in school, I had a student ID. If I didn't have the right or appropriate ID, I could be suppressed from my vote. Another example of that is definitely voter registration. So a lot of folks are used to, whether they like it or not, someone coming up to them with a clipboard and saying, "Hey, are you registered to vote? Yes or no? May I help walk you through?" And with COVID-19, it hasn't been as easy to do face-to-face interaction, which is why also Vote.org created QR codes, which were used for multiple marches and protests across the country the past couple of months. So folks can still register people to vote, but this way we're doing it via QR code, and it's a little safer, as well as our online tool, our voter registration tool, which millions of folks have used to date. Another voter suppression tactic that comes to mind is the voter purging. So as we know, voters get purged off the list, usually because someone has moved or someone has passed. But there's states like Georgia, for example, where voter purging affects communities of color, particularly the Black community, in ways that it doesn't affect others. And folks who go through all this work to make sure that they're registered and go through all the right steps can still be knocked off, cleared off, because of processes that aren't direct. So that's another way. And I guess I'm also thinking of just in general, like lack of information and also confusion. So we don't teach civics in schools anymore. We rarely have conversations when it comes to voting because everyone thinks it's political. We've been talking for an hour now. Not once have I mentioned a political party. So being comfortable with having these conversations in our circles, in our newsrooms, to make people feel more included in the process so they're not alone. There's a lot of people who even work in this field who still get confused with all the different election changes and stuff that's happening. And that's okay. We're humans, not robots. And it's important that we share the resources and the information we have so everyone can feel empowered and knowledgeable instead of holding the resources and information for ourselves. Because another tactic that we know works is grassroots, face-to-face, online, person-to-person, mano-a-mano conversations where people are organizing and having conversations with their communities about what is affecting them and what means to them. And that requires having conversations about how we can shift power through voting and not making voting look like a chore.
Thank you. Thank you. I think everything you said is spot on, and I think that those are things that that journalists should think more about, as we go into November, because those things, like you said, aren't particularly new problems, and they're not, necessarily about to just go away as we head into November. But I'm wondering, does anybody else on the call have a question for Najaah? You can either type it in the chat, or if you want to, you can unmute your microphone and ask one.
Hi, Najaah. Thank you so much for that. It was really informative. I have one question. I was recently reading an op-ed by a voter with some disabilities who brought to my attention all the challenges that people with disabilities face when accessing their right to vote. I'm wondering if y'all provide any tools for voters with disabilities, or if not, where would be the best place to look for resources?
Thank you for that question. And it's definitely something we're working on as we want to make sure our online tools are accessible to all Americans. And of course, folks with disabilities do need extra support. With that being said, we are in partnership with organizations where I will make sure to follow up with resources with the deck as well, where they're able to walk through and support our voters who have disabilities and may have issues with maneuvering our website the way it is.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for that question.
Awesome. Thank you. Any more questions? All right. Going once, going twice. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, Najaah, thank you so much for dropping by and talking to us a little bit about all the great things that you all have going on there. I know that I found it beneficial, and I think that all the journalists on this call will be able to use you as a resource, which I think is really, really good for them. And I think that being able to dig around you all's website with all of the things that you all have for folks, I think is valuable as well. Before people pop out, I want to give you all a little bit of information on where you can find more of Najaah's presentation today. You can go over to electionsos.org. We're going to be uploading this video and a link to the deck a little later. And also, if you're available for our next session, it is going to be about digital safety as a journalist that we're going to be doing with an organization called PEN, and that's on Wednesday. And Najaah will be joining us for another session a little later that we'll share some more information about with you all. But like I said, her email is there, her contact information is there. These sessions are not, only to, hear great facts and figures from the presenters, but it's also to, put them in your Rolodex, put them in your contacts. When you need to talk about youth voting, when you need to talk about, making sure that youth are civically engaged, when you need to talk about, building digital tools for voters, I am just going to go ahead and nominate Najaah as the person to call because this is her world. This is what she lives and breathes, and she is available as a resource to you all. But thank you all for coming out. I know that this is not a slow news cycle that we're in right now. So thank you for taking the time. And yeah, you will see see more on our website. And we look forward to, hopefully seeing you all again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.